You are listening to a special broadcast regarding the 2022 general local elections on Peach City Community Radio on CFUZ 92.9 FM and online at www.peachcityradio.org. Peach City Radio volunteers invited all 5 registered candidates for mayor of the city of Penticton to be interviewed. Key topics were selected to be asked to all candidates, with several questions developed for each specific candidate based on their campaign or on public information. All mayoral interviews have been made available for streaming on peachcityradio.org. Peach City Radio is actively looking for volunteers interested in news and events that would like to bring their passion to the airwaves. Email news@cfuz.ca or contact the station if you're interested in joining our news and events collective and make impactful radio in the South Okanagan. Peach City Radio and the interviewers do not endorse particular candidates. This interview will be edited for time and sound quality, but not for content. Today we have John Vassilaki in here. Thank you very much for coming in, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
What I'd like to do is just start off by asking you a bit more about what is your background and connection to the city of Penticton. You're obviously the mayor currently, but how did you come to Penticton in the first place?
We immigrated from Greece back in 1956. We came directly to Penticton as our sponsor. Back in those years, in the 40s and 50s, you had to have a sponsor in order to immigrate to Canada. And we were lucky enough that our sponsor was right here in Penticton, and that's why we came directly here to live. And we've been living here ever since for the past 66 years.
What was that like being a first-generation immigrant coming from Greece?
Huge culture shock.
Really, eh?
We couldn't understand why things were done the way they were. When we left the old country, I come from a small island in the Aegean. It's called Naxos. It's between Santorini and Mykonos. We're in the same province. And when we left, we had no water, no sewer, no garbage pickup, no electricity. We had absolutely nothing. We lived in a home with dirt roof or clay roof, and the same thing with the floor of our house. In our basement, we had 8 chickens, 2 pigs, 2 goats, and a mule. And we all lived, and we had a family of 5 at the time. 2 boys and a girl, and my 2 siblings were, it was a boy and a girl, and there were 3 of us when we moved to Canada, and my mom and dad.
And you might have said this, but how old were you?
I was 8 and a half.
Wow. So it's almost more of a culture shock for your parents then.
Because, it was even worse for them than it was for the kids. Kids adjust very easily. They make friends a lot easier than adults do. And it was very difficult because they had to work sometimes 2-3 jobs in order to make ends meet. We were lucky enough that our sponsors, which were relatives, it was my mom's uncle that brought us over here. They had a home for us, 1.5 bedroom home. 5 of us lived in there, with only a wooden stove, burned wood and coal, and that's how we cooked our meals and also heated the house in the winter.
And as you said in your campaign, you've gone on to create businesses in the city of Penticton.
Absolutely. My mom was a go-getter type person, so my dad would rather work than do anything else. But my mom was more progressive like I am, and she wanted to get into business. You can't make any money working for other people. You got to do it yourself. So when I was 19, 20 maybe, we bought our first restaurant in downtown Penticton after I came back from school in Vancouver, where I went for a computer and business course at McKay Technical Institute.
And just for context, what year was that?
That was back in 1966, 67, and a little bit of 68. And when I came back, we opened our first restaurant in 1968. We called it the Sportsman's. Many thousands of Pentictonites used to come and eat there. It was like a diner from the 50s, because that's when we came to Canada, and that's what we knew. So it was difficult to begin with. It was a small restaurant, but we persevered, worked hard. We used to work 16-hour days, and at one point, for a couple of years, we were open 24 hours a day. We were one of 4 restaurants downtown at the time, and they were all run by Greeks. All the restaurants at the downtown were run by Greeks.
I think we'll get to why you're running now. So
Okay.
you've been mayor, you've been council. Why do you want to do another 4-year term as mayor for the city of Penticton?
For the love that I have for Penticton. I'm very, very passionate about Penticton. What I am today, I accomplished in Penticton. I haven't won the 649 or Lotto Max. Everything my family owns, we earned with our own 2 hands by working long hours. And I don't want that to go away. I want Penticton to continue to prosper the way it used to prosper back in 60s, 70s, and some parts of the 80s. That's what I want to continue that prosperity in our community. I want us to prosper, and I have an invested interest in Penticton. I helped develop the 400, 500, and 600 blocks on Main Street and on Martin Street. And like I said, I'm very, very progressive, and the momentum that we have built up over the past 4 years, I don't want that to go away. I want to continue that momentum, whether it has to do with fighting crime or building more affordable housing. And by affordable, I mean more reasonably priced housing for the public, especially for those that are less fortunate than we are. And I want to do more with our zoning. We have to change the way we zone land in Penticton in order to lower the price of land. 'Cause as you know, the majority of the cost of housing in the Okanagan Valley is the land. We are limited to space, especially in Penticton. We have lake on either end. We have the Penticton Indian Band on the west side, and we have our agricultural lands on the west side. And we're stuck in the center with no place to go but up. The hillside development, hillsides, public doesn't like it. And I'm sort of in between. We can't ruin our hillsides and what we have for the visual contact that people have with our lands and the future of this community.
So my next question was about change, and it sounds like some of the changes you're looking for you've already mentioned. But specific to change, in the next 4 years, as you're the incumbent, what changes do you want to see at City Hall?
The changes that I want to see is like we have been in the past 4 years. I want City Council to be united for the cause of the people of Penticton. And I'm not, by being united, I don't mean everybody has to vote like the way the mayor votes. That's the last thing I want. I want all my city councilors, as I have in the past 4 years, to be individuals and to have their own mind, their own thinking. I have never, ever told any of my councilors how to vote. I leave it up to their own conscience and how they want to see Penticton prosper. I want to see us and the provincial government to get together along with the federal government a lot more than they are willing to do at the present time. If we can get together with BC Housing, Interior Health, the provincial government, and the federal government, we don't have the resources without them to do what has to be done with crime and housing. And that's where I want to go on this term. And by being, like in the past, many city councils were so passive that they would never push back on the government so we can get what we need. Some politicians want to be as passive as they were in the past, but we can never get anything done. And what have they accomplished in the past 20 years if they didn't push back and have our rights to be respected in our community when it comes to zoning, when it comes to our land use and all those kind of things that we've been threatened that they're going to try to take those rights away from us, where we won't be able to make our own decisions. The provincial government wants to make those decisions, and that's the last thing I want to happen in our community.
I'm going to mix the order up a bit.
Sure.
This is a question that's coming. So your relationship with David Eby has, of course, been in the media. In terms of that relationship and his recent announcement of some of the potential housing changes that might be coming that would affect local municipalities.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if you could speak to both that relationship and what you think about some of the potential changes to what municipalities will be forced to do in terms of housing decisions in the future.
The relationship I had with the Attorney General and BC Housing Minister at the time had to do with me trying to protect the citizens of Penticton. I pushed back because of what he was trying to do. Very few mayors have ever stood up to ministers with such power previously to me coming in. I'm very aggressive, and I'm aggressive because I want our people to survive and not to be pushed around by senior governments that like they have been in the past. That's my main purpose for running again. I want to stand up and I want to advocate, continuously advocate for our people, especially those that need housing. And I'm talking about homeless people. I want them to have the proper housing, not to be warehoused, but to be properly housed with wraparound services so that they can become better health-wise than they are at the present time. By just throwing them in a home and throwing the key away and leave them on their own, that doesn't work. And I see that Mr. Eby is thinking differently now than he was thinking before with the statements that he made the other day. I read in the paper because I only know what I read in the media. Yeah. He saw that what he was putting in place previously didn't work. So he has to try other things in order to make it work and for all the people to become equal, have the proper housing, the proper health care. And that's what happens when we've got to get all our the different things that the government has, like interior health, our health departments in Victoria. They have to come together and think of the people before they think about money. Right now, governments, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal, the first thing to think about is money. We don't want to spend this kind of money. But that has to change. They have to put people before money, and that's the only way we can accomplish what has to happen in order for us and all the people to survive properly.
Yeah, just a follow-up question. When he was Minister, David Eby, he didn't try to be combative directly towards the city of Penticton, but he would always speak to benefits going to other communities. He mentioned the city of Vernon, for example, getting benefit. For your combative approach, or I guess a direct approach with a minister in terms of defending what you think the city of Penticton needs, could you have gone too far, or do you think there might have been some repair to that relationship to allow the city of Penticton to have access to future grants or future services? Where do you think that relationship might go from here?
When you're trying to look after our population, our job on city council is to look after our public. Mm-hmm. That's my main concern. If we don't look after our public, then we've failed. And for me, what I did, I don't think I went too far with Mr. Eby, because we had dozens and dozens and dozens of other municipalities that agreed with what the City Council of Penticton was doing and standing up to the that's one word I can't pronounce, I'll use a different word, what he was trying to push for us to do. But the thing is, you mentioned about getting grants. We haven't lost any grants. Most of the grants that we applied for, we got. We got grants for the bike lanes. We got grants for us to make better use of our staff and how we can use our development a lot better, how our staff should be going forward and speeding up the process. We got tons of grants for all that kind of work. We haven't lost any grants. Really, that we had applied for major grants. We got them all. So by me being aggressive, that didn't hurt our grant system or any of the other stuff that we get from the provincial and federal government. That didn't hurt it at all. And that's what I believe in with all my heart.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I think you've kind of gone through what expectations you can accomplish in the next 4 years, but the next 4 years is a new term. What expectations do you see 4 years from now? Like, what do you think you can accomplish as mayor?
The biggest accomplishment I want is, number one, is housing. Number two, safety and crime. And unless we all get together, and unless we sit down and speak together with the people in mind. In other words, we got to think of the people before we think of ourselves. A lot of politicians say things that the public wants to hear and not the reality of what's happening. I'm a straight arrow type guy. I say it the way it is. I don't make up things, and I would never put wool over people's eyes. The council that's going to come in come October the 15th, I want them to think first of the people, before money, and before themselves, or their friends. And sometimes, I mean, we're all humans. We'll agree with this, but on the other hand, the same thing might come up and we'll disagree with it. We have to be consistent and fair. Those two words, consistency and fairness, is one issue that we have to push on and make sure that that's what happens.
Okay, we'll move into some of the issues now, and we've identified a few that we've heard in social media and just in the community. Housing, you've already mentioned. What do you think will be in the next 4 years your main push for both affordability and availability of housing in our community?
You know, supply is not the only way we can accomplish having more housing in our community or any community. Our zoning bylaw is the main tool that we have to control development. And by zoning our land a lot different than we do at the present time is going to be my number one priority. In other words, what we have to do is allow a larger footprint of a development on a smaller piece of land where we can put more doors on that piece of property and therefore bringing down the cost of land to each unit, whether it's for sale or whether it's for rent. That's number one, and that's very, very important. Number two is that zoning again, where on larger developments, let's say a building, 40 or more units, that a certain percentage of that property will be below market value rental or for sale. We have the power to do that. You know, in the past 4 years, that's where we've slipped through the cracks by not bringing those types of zoning into our development process. But that's my main reason for running for mayor again. I want to put it into place and make sure that our people have a reasonable priced housing for them to move into.
And as mayor, you saw when you're looking at density especially, some of the local residents would be concerned about parking.
Yes.
They'd be concerned about viewscapes.
Yes.
There might be other concerns they would bring up project by project. How do you want to deal with those issues? Because as you push for density, there will be, we can call them NIMBYs, but I would say people that are generally concerned about detriment to their biggest asset, their home. They're concerned about parking. They're concerned about how the roads will be used. How do you address that if you're going to be pushing for further density in this community?
You know, we just attended UBCM. It's convention that we have every year, that every municipality and the mayors, councilors, and as well as our regions also attend. All the directors from all the regional districts also attend. I attended many of the speaking engagements that were there, professionals that come and speak. And you know what they said? And that struck me deeply, was that we should pre-zone land in certain parts of the community where those NIMBYism doesn't take place. Because you know how NIMBYs are. They don't want they don't object to development as long as it's not next door to their home. Now we have to determine how we can unite our community where we pre-zone certain areas for example, high rises, so that they don't interfere with the neighborhood, the culture of the neighborhood. We have to look at so many different ways that we can accomplish this. We should be putting a housing authority in place to advise city council the direction that we should be going. But we got to hire plain ordinary people like all of us are, plus professionals on that housing authority to advise how we can improve the way development takes place in our community, and how we can make housing more affordable for those that are less fortunate than some of us.
So you'd be looking at forming committees on the basis of housing, then that's
Absolutely.
one of your...
A housing authority would be the ideal thing to go into.
Okay. The next one you mentioned was crime, and even the perception of crime, because they seem like there could be the crime stats, and the perception of crime can be somewhat different. And it's a major issue for communities across British Columbia. How in Penticton do you intend to address this issue?
We have to change the methods our police force, our Crown Council, our judicial system is working. Right now, as you know and you've heard from others, we have that revolving door policy that Mr. Eby put in place, where they don't lay charges, they don't imprison anyone, they don't put them in jail, because it'll make those folks worse than they already are. We have to get together, cooperate, and we have to come up with ideas how we can stop those prolific, and there's only 13 of them in Penticton, prolific offenders that are causing the chaos that we have in our community. They get captured or they're being arrested, they're taken to court. Within hours, they're back out on the street doing exactly what they were doing before. I would propose that we hire our own counsel, similar to Crown Counsel or district attorneys as they're called in the United States, where they represent the city of Penticton and the citizens of Penticton, that they will speak on our behalf when those prolific offenders get arrested and they go to court, so that the judge will hear the concerns not only of city council and city staff, but the concerns of the citizens of Penticton, and they'll fight to make sure those prolific offenders get off the street instead of being released back on the street. That's what I'm proposing, and I'll be bringing it forward when I'm elected back into city council.
Is there any other initiatives you'd be looking at?
There are so many, but we need the cooperation of all our of all those that we work with, the provincial government, interior, health, federal government. All those things have to come together. And if we don't work together, we can't accomplish anything. We don't have the means to do it on our own. We need all those other folks that we work with to come forward and give us a hand.
Okay, thank you. The Lake Bike Lane, as you know, has been generated a lot of noise in this community.
Yes.
You were at the forum that the Chamber put on, and you were asked that question last, and you could hear the crowd. I'm just wondering, as your council, as mayor, supported the development of this bike lane, Are you happy with the project so far? And what's your stance on future cycling lanes in Penticton?
I'm happy and unhappy at the same time. It should have been completed at the same time. I know the funding wasn't there. It cost us $2.5 million for the first portion of the bike lane. $1 million plus of that was given to us as a grant from the provincial government. Even though I was fighting EB, we still got that grant. So we didn't lose in any of the grants just because EB and I disagreed on certain things. I think it has to, and by the way, the vote on City Council was 6-1 in favor of the bike lane, even though now I hear some of those that are running again, they're trying to back away from it because the public is against it and they're making a little bit of noise. They're trying to back away from it, even though they voted for it. And that's where integrity comes in. If you don't believe in the decisions you make and how you vote, if you don't believe in that, then what are you doing there? You have to believe in what you say, what you do, and you got to stick to your guns because it's the right thing for the city of Penticton. It's part of our infrastructure. It's part of our transportation system. We spend millions upon millions of dollars on our roads for the safety of those that drive cars. Why shouldn't we spend the same, not the same amount of money, but spend money for the safety of those that are cycling? I believe very, very strongly on cycling. That cuts our carbon footprint as well when we're not burning fossil fuels to get around in the city. But, people have to have patience. They have to wait until it's completed. And then we take a pause and look at what have we accomplished, how well is it used, are there improvements that could be made to it, and how we can make those improvements. I've been listening to what people have been saying about all those poles sticking up and those, and I think myself they're ugly, those fancy doodads that they have along the pathway there. I don't like them either. But, we got to wait until it's completed and then look at if we made any errors, to correct those errors. Because if you don't see it completed to see, is it working right or isn't it working right, we're not going to accomplish anything. I'll give you an example. When the community center was built, it was passed by 51%. And there was a huge a fight within the community. 50% of the people were for it and 50% were against it. But how many of those people that were against it would do without the community center today?
The South Okanagan Event Center.
No, the community center.
Going further back, the community center itself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now,
okay.
number 2 is the South Okanagan Event Center.
Yeah.
Look at the fight, the city council of the day, and I was part of that. We went through. When the people called it the white elephant, they gave it a whole bunch of names and they criticized us for spending that $80 million to build it. But how many of those people that criticized us back then would do without it today? You got to give time to everything to come together and work and to see its potential. Before we start criticizing and calling city council names. I mean, people phone me all hours of the day and they use the 4-letter words and all that kind of stuff with me. But, when I know I've done something right and it's for the best interest of the community, I respect everything they say, but I'm not going to back down because it's for the betterment of our community and our citizens.
So just for clarity, this project, if you are reelected, will continue lake to lake?
Absolutely. But you know what? One thing they don't understand is that the majority of the cost of the next half of the project is intersections that are so dangerous today. People keep getting hurt on those intersections. Now, the bulk of the money to complete the system is those intersections. Okay. And I'm talking about, I believe there's 3 of them that are going to be improved. And that's the bulk of the cost of the second half of the project.
We listened to help formulate these questions, we did listen to the chamber questions that they put to the different candidates. And vacation rentals came up a number of times from the business community. The city of Penticton is a supporter currently of vacation rentals. You guys have a webpage and a video promoting vacation rentals. What is your stance for the city of Penticton's position on vacation rentals moving forward, as housing is your number one issue?
Okay. I can tell you that our tourism suffers because of the lack of hotel rooms, proper hotel rooms in the city of Penticton. Now, there are so many different conventions that don't come here because of that. One of them is UBCM. They used to come to Penticton every 3rd year. They stopped coming about 10 years ago. And I was on city council when they informed us, UBCM informed us, that they will no longer come into the city of Penticton because of the lack of hotel rooms for all the folks that are coming. And there's 2,000 people that come to that convention year after year after year for a week. We were together for a week. Now, they don't come, and we've lost tens of millions of dollars every time that they never came. What was the reason? No hotel rooms. And those that we have, the majority of them weren't the type of rooms that they would like to sleep in. Now, we have to come up with solutions as to what to do to try and get those conventions to come to Penticton and improve our economic development. And one way of doing it is our Airbnbs, vacation rentals. People prefer, they don't mind paying that extra amount of money as long as they sleep comfortably and it's a nice, clean place that they're going to stay in once they come here. So I do believe in it until such time as we get enough hotel rooms in Penticton. Now, since I became mayor, 2 new hotels have been built. The one on Eckerd Avenue, the Fair, Mayfair, I think they call it. And now the one that's happening on Westminster Avenue.
Yeah, under construction right now.
And the city sold Monday the land in order to put that hotel up because it's needed. I'm against selling city land. I always have been, always will be. But in this case, I voted in favor of it because the hotel is needed worse than anything else in the community. And that's why we have to find ways of getting better accommodations for our tourism, not only for that, also for housing for the folks that live in Penticton. They're together, so we have to concentrate and get together and figure out ways of helping out both sides. Do we have too many Airbnbs and vacation renters? I don't know.
And I guess that's the question. How do we know? Because you talked about zoning and you talked about commercial. We need more, as you stated. You believe that we need more commercial hotel space or space for people to come on vacation. But you talked about housing. You also talked about zoning. And for me, this is my opinion, the residential zoning for these vacation rentals is somewhat in opposition to a commercial zone, which would be required for a hotel.
Yeah.
What will you be doing in the next 4 years to look at the vacation rentals and see how they best fit within the city of Penticton?
It's not any different. What you just been saying is not any different than what EB brought out 2 days ago, where he says a single-family dwelling on a single piece of property, instead of putting one dwelling on there, now you can add 2 more and make it 3. So even he is changing his thoughts on housing and how we can accomplish and put more inventory in place for housing in our communities. And I think he's got a great idea there. That's why we have our zoning controls all that. Mm-hmm. And I believe that we should be doing it, and we shouldn't have been waiting for Mr. Eby to bring it forward. I had this idea many years ago, and I've been bringing it up, but sometimes it goes through to deaf ears, and people don't listen because of NIMBYism, for one thing. They don't want that many units on one small piece of property, and of course, then they start complaining about parking. Where are all those extra bodies? And, you know, every household has more than one car. Some have 3 or 4. I know my wife and I, we have 2 cars, and we have a collector car that we only drive in the summertime. But I have enough parking space for my home to take care of our houses, our automobiles, so they don't have to be parked in the street. And all my commercial buildings downtown, I supply parking for all my tenants. And I believe that many of those that have commercial property should be responsible or should put in place parking for their tenants. I know on Main Street and some of Martin Street property it's impossible because what's developed on those pieces of land is from property line to property line, so there's no place. My buildings are exactly the same, but I went and purchased bare land for parking for my tenants. Now, it doesn't mean everybody can do it or they can afford to do it, but because they can't. But wherever possible, that's what should be taking place.
Thank you very much. This is our last question. I'm going to read it verbatim, so I'm going to read off the paper here, because this is a very sensitive subject for yourself. We just want to make sure we're very careful in how we phrase this. So people forget that politicians are human and that we live in a small community. You were featured in a recent court case that brought to light sensitive issues between you and your family. As a public figure, how do you deal with your personal life being under review, and what do you ask the media to consider when covering this type of story?
Okay, I don't interfere with the media. If any family problems come up, it's a free country. They can publish whatever they want. But unfortunately, I can't speak on it because it's in the hands of the court. And it wouldn't be wise for me to say anything.
And to be fair, we're not asking you to speak directly to it, but what we're trying to do with these broadcasts is to show the humanity. Often people are boiled down to sound bites or just one or two issues. The purpose of this broadcast is to show all the candidates running for mayor are humans. I guess this must have been a very trying time for you. Just wondering, what would you like us to do in the media when we're dealing with sensitive issues like this in a small community like Penticton? Like, most people know each other. We're about 30,000 people.
I think, me personally, I think the media should respect the rights of everyone. Mm-hmm. Whether they're in the media or not, respect their rights and keep what is a family issue. It's a family issue. My family, we've all been partners for over 55 years. And people have business issues. And this just happens to be one of those business issues that came along that I couldn't allow to continue to go forward. I had to protect my family and my family's future. And that's why I took the course that I did. And I don't think I should be saying anything.
No, that's fine. Again, I just wanted to raise that up because it was an issue that we felt as media. How do you cover sensitive issues with people in a smaller community? But thank you for your answers. This is mayoral candidate John Vassilaki. You're listening to Peach City Radio 92.9 FM. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. It was a great questions, and I hope people will be listening and understand where I'm coming from.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.